It is one that we brought you earlier, late last year rather. Remember, we covered it about a Virginia police officer drove across the country, killing 3 relatives of a 15-year-old girl he catfished online. And now we know she was not his first victim, okay? A woman is now claiming the same cop tried to groom her nearly a decade ago when she was just 13. The anonymous woman said when she saw the face of Austin Lee Edwards on the news, she began to cry, almost threw up. She saw his face dozens of times on video chats nearly a decade ago when she was just a young teenager. That from Riverside Police. 13-year-old and the 20-year-old first met in October 2014. Online platform that randomly pairs users to communicate. Just one day later, October 25th, 2014, they began talking on Skype. Pair initially bonded over memes, the woman said, but the conversation very quickly turned sexual. In messages, Edwards would also repeatedly drop homophobic and racist slurs, including the N-word, but he also seemed to be under the false impression that the girl he was chatting with was black. You're black, he wrote. He wrote on October 29th, I have jungle fever, let's do this. Edwards was unaware the woman who was white was a minor. When they first began chatting, he would often wait for her to finish school in order to video chat or to respond to messages. Los Angeles Times reviewed nearly 4,000 messages provided by the woman that offered deep insight into Edwards' psyche. The messages show Edwards repeatedly pressured her to share nude photos of herself, even after she disclosed that she was barely a teenager. The woman told the Times that she shared with Edwards nude photos of herself when she was a child. Conversations often delved into suicide, self-harm. Edwards would say she was the only person he had and would threaten to kill himself if she ever stopped talking to him, the woman recalled. He would often show off his handgun and knife collection over video, she said. In 2016, Edwards was detained for a psychiatric evaluation after cutting his hand, threatening to kill himself and his father. The woman, then 14, had tried to cut off contact with Edwards less than 2 weeks before he harmed himself. LA Times. After she blocked Edwards on Skype in 2016, the year she turned 15, he continued to send her messages from different Facebook accounts for years. April 2020, after she turned 18, tried to call her on Facebook. According to a screenshot she shared with the Times, she did not pick up. December 2020, he messaged her from a Facebook account. He wrote, "Hey," with a sad face. She messaged back, telling him never to contact her again and blocked him. A few months after that, Edwards applied to join the Virginia State Police. During the hiring process, he disclosed that he had voluntarily checked himself into the mental health facility in 2016. That disclosure should have prompted further investigation. It did not. Human error and incomplete query of databases led to Edwards' application being approved. That from a spokeswoman with the Virginia State Police. Of course, it would be too late. Edwards would go on to catfish a 15-year-old girl driving to California where she lived. He killed her relatives, set their bodies on fire, kidnapped the teenager, then took his own life while on the run. The 15-year-old was rescued by police. Rayyvana, I don't know where you'd like to start here. You have an even younger victim, and we don't know when the 15-year-old, at least I don't have it in front of me, the one that was rescued, that grooming began. But it just seems like there's steps all along the way, but particularly with the Virginia State Police, here we go again. It's not like he hid the voluntary, he called it 2016, checking into a facility there. Is your reaction to learning more? Because to me, there's gotta be other people out there that he's done this to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a good time to highlight what I think is a concerted effort that's been going on by predominantly right-wing individuals to undermine the true definition of grooming. And they'll conflate taking your child to a family-friendly drag show or even just loving and accepting your queer child as grooming, when this is what grooming actually is. It is ingratiating yourself with a young person and trying to form some sort of dependence with them, and then furthering it into, making sexual inquiries of them and demanding sexually explicit pictures from them. And what this is just truly horrifying. But what's also horrifying is that he was allowed to become a police officer in the first place. How weak are their background checks for hiring officers that they couldn't find anything on this man that would alert them to the fact that, he's one, racist, because he was pretty explicit in his racism. So I'm sure it wasn't just in these online chats. Two, that he was a child predator. And it's concerning that if they had found it, what would they have done? Maybe they didn't find anything in their background checks of him when they allowed him to become a police officer, but I can't imagine that with the resources that they had, that they weren't even made aware of any of this going on. Were they protecting him? Were there more victims that they concealed? There's so much more to the story, but it's truly horrifying. I'm thankful that the 13-year-old victim and the 15-year-old victim made it out safely, but of course that can't be said for the 15-year-old victims' families.
Yeah, what is she going through right now? Because we can't even discuss the word healing when you have to go through this horrificness. It's just outrageous. Does it bear more mention that this guy was so dogged in the pursuit here, relentless, going on for years, and it's just further indication that, yeah, we could teach our kids to advocate for themselves, but this 13 when it began, 18 when she finally tells him, don't you contact me again. She finally has enough voice to say, and listen, there's 35-year-olds that can't escape, this kind of scum. But does that bear more repeating and mentioning, unpacking, if you will?
I think it absolutely does. And I think it really begins with proper education, because, oftentimes children or victims in general, no matter how old they are, will blame themselves for a long time, and they'll view it as they have done something wrong. Growing up, I had a friend who was the victim of the same sort of grooming that happened from the same platform, actually, and it went on for years. And she was so concerned that she was going to be held criminally liable, for what was going on. She just didn't have the education. No one was informing her that she was the victim. So it's really, it's a culture of blaming victims for their abuse. And it starts at a very young age. So it's a conversation that needs to be had, from the ground on up, starting from a young age on up, so that these victims know that there are resources. But there's also the issue of a lot of victims go to the police and nothing is done. So it's really a deep issue that needs to be addressed on several different levels.
Yeah, I remember covering a story, and I don't recall off the top of my head the jurisdiction, but you had grown women who had criminal records because as teens they were exploited. Children, right? Prostitution on their record for teenagers. Okay, that's not called prostitution; it's called rape. Okay, so it's a respect thing. The other thing that I wanted to go back to is, again, from the Virginia State Police spokeswoman, where they talk about how he voluntarily checked himself into the mental health facility. That should have triggered further investigation. There's this thing in this country where mental health is all encompassing, and it means that you are a threat and you're a risk to society. That's not, it's just use words like mental health and say, whoa, that should trigger this. What about what Dr. Richey often talks about on this show, which is a full workup? Who are you? What makes you tick? Shouldn't we all, whether you've been to a mental health facility or maybe struggled with a bout of depression, shouldn't everybody, if you want to be a police officer and target others and police others, shouldn't you have to jump through more hoops than currently? What's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because there's such a stigmatization of mental health in society, that people are fearful of even reaching out to get those resources. But those resources can be, instrumental in helping you recover and learn from what's going on and learn more about yourself. So I'm not saying that nobody who's ever checked into a mental health facility would be able to, go on and get a job, even working in the police. But there definitely needs to be a conversation about how it's okay to reach out for those resources. But when it comes to being put into a position of power, like being a police officer, they should just be having those checkups, and they should have, maybe even mandatory therapy sessions for all their officers continuously, so that they can make sure that they are in the right state of mind to be in that position of authority, because so often they are not. And you see them, use that as a justification for when they do something wrong in their position. Well, I was just so stressed, I was overworked, yada, 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 which could be true. But if they are having these continuous checkups, you can prevent that from happening in the first place.
Boy, I think you should be in charge of some kind of uniform, entryway here. And I think you're exactly right. We hear intelligence agencies who have these kind of random checks, if you will, where they go through things again. Perhaps you have to have some kind of a lie detector test and other things. But yeah, if police are going through so much on the job with that trauma, then wouldn't it just make sense to keep, a checkup?